Hey guys, tonight we step into the thick, humid jungles of Central America, where sharp cries of howler monkeys echo through the trees, and the air smells like damp earth and wood smoke. You kneel in the dark soil, watching ancient hands mold you from mud. Yes, you. Except, oops, you crumble instantly. The gods sigh. Round two wood. You stand hollow-eyed and stiff, until a thunderstorm sends you floating away like a soggy log. On the third try, you're formed from ground maize. Yes, corn. Finally, something sticks. You blink into being under the glow of a sacred ceiba tree. Part food, part human, fully divine experiment. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle through flickering torchlight in an ancient cave, hearing whispers of the Popol Vuh, the sacred book of the Kitch Maya. It's a tale older than most civilizations you've heard of, passed down by oral tradition long before it ever touched paper. And yes, the first humans really were made of corn. No, not metaphorically. Literally. The gods tried different materials, but only maize gave us strength, intelligence, and the stamina to farm more maize. Kind of poetic, really. You're what you eat. The gods who shaped this world aren't your standard toga-wearing types. They're mischievous, experimental, occasionally a little vengeful, and very into teamwork. The hero twins, Hunahpu and Xbalanque, play tricks on the Lords of Death, then zip around the underworld like it's an obstacle course designed by a sadistic game show host. They play ball, outwit demons, and like the chaotic demigods they are, ultimately ascend to the sky as the sun and moon. That ball game they played? Oh, we'll get to that later. Just know it wasn't exactly for fun. But first, you squat by a smoky fire in a small clearing, somewhere around 1500 BCE. Here, the first flickers of Mayan society spark into being. You hear the low hiss of tortillas on a comal and the earthy thump of stone grinding stone as women crush maize into masa. These are the early days, small villages tucked among rivers and jungle, living gently off the land. Beans, squash, and of course more corn. Life is seasonal, slow, tied to the whims of the weather gods. Rain means food. Drought means hardship. Everyone watches the skies. You help erect a simple wooden post to track the sun's movement. Primitive astronomy, but it works. Even here, a quiet genius hums beneath daily survival. You feel it in the rhythm of the planting chants, the thatched roof geometry. The careful way time itself is being counted. One day, someone carves a mark in stone. It's a date, one you can't read yet, but it means something. The beginning of a long story measured not in years, but in BK tons. A Mayan long count calendar starts ticking forward. You're now inside a clock that will outlive cities, rulers, and civilizations. No pressure. And here's a quirky little fact. In Mayan belief, time is circular. The world is born, destroyed, and reborn in cycles. That means the end of the world isn't some dramatic Hollywood explosion. It's more like Tuesday, just the end of a cycle. See you next epoch. But there's already one mystery gnawing at the edges of your journey. Why, if they understood cycles so well, didn't the Mayans see their own collapse coming? That's what we're slowly winding toward. But for now, things are quiet, steady, kind of beautiful. You step through a grove and find the early signs of agriculture turning toward innovation. Terraced hillsides catch the runoff from rain. Irrigation channels cut through the jungle soil, and compact fields yield enough surplus to think bigger. You help haul timber for a communal building. Nothing fancy yet, but the seeds of cityhood are here. And just beyond this clearing, through the thick, buzzing heat, another tribe is doing something similar. You don't know it yet, but those neighbors might be the Olmecs. Or maybe not. Historians still argue whether the Olmecs came before, after, or right alongside the earliest Mayans. You'll meet them soon, but already ideas are passing through trade, migration, maybe even marriage. It's not just villages now. It's a region starting to dream together. And over in the corner, A priest raises a cup of cacao and says a prayer to Chak, the rain god. The frothy liquid has chili in it, and it burns a little as you sip. Delicious, yes, but also sacred. You just taken part in your first Mayan ritual. One more quirky tidbit. Mayans sometimes wore perfume made from crocodile dung. No, we're not making that up. It was said to have magical properties. You try not to breathe too deeply as someone walks past, wearing it proudly. Above you, constellations start to shimmer. In another 100 years, someone will build a temple aligned to those stars. But for now, you're just a corn child under the cosmos, listening to the first heartbeat of an empire still thousands of years from crumbling. Sleepy yet? You're still barefoot on soft, loamy ground, but things are changing fast. The jungle has cleared a bit more, replaced by compact clusters of stone and wood. The gentle rustle of maize in the fields still whispers on the wind, but now it's joined by something else. Stone chisels tapping, wheels turning, well, metaphorical ones, and children shouting in a language that hasn't changed all that much in 3,000 years. Villages are becoming towns. Towns are becoming cities. You stand atop a small platform in what used to be just another patch of forest. From here, you can see the beginning bones of a city, low-rise structures and rectangular grids, a central courtyard, and look at that, your very first Mayan pyramid. It's modest for now, maybe 2 or 3 stories high, but it's still taller than any tree around. That's a statement. That's ambition carved in limestone. And here's the thing, the Mayans didn't just build cities. They landscaped them. Each structure, each avenue, each temple was aligned to the heavens. You step out of the plaza and notice the rising sun fits perfectly between 2 massive pillars. Coincidence? Nope. It's architecture by the stars. You wander down a marketplace that smells of roasted cacao, dried chilies, and sweaty ambition. Trade is humming. There are no coins, just clever bartering. You hear someone offer 3 obsidian blades for a bolt of woven cotton. Nearby, a merchant stacks cacao, beans like currency, because yes, chocolate used to be money, and honestly, it still should be. There's a low rumble in the ground. Not an earthquake. It's the sound of drums. The town's population is growing, and with it, a festival is kicking off. Dancers wearing jaguar skins and feathered cloaks sweep past you, feet pounding the packed earth in perfect rhythm. You spot children trying to mimic them from the sidelines, clumsily draped in oversized feathers. You laugh softly, but keep an eye out. The last time someone laughed at a ritual here, they ended up painted blue and missing a heart. Everywhere you look, there's art. Etched into pottery, burned into murals, chiseled into temple steps. And the writing? You can't read it yet, but it's beautiful. Swirling, looping glyphs full of animals, gods, dates, and something that feels suspiciously like sarcasm. Some of these glyphs won't be deciphered for thousands of years. Right now, they're secret notes between kings and time itself. A quirky footnote here. Mayans had 0. Not like nothing, but 0, the number. Long before Europe caught on. That circular shell-like glyph, that's the earliest known use of 0 in the Americas, and it changed the way they counted time. You're walking through a civilization that not only measured history, it practically invented timekeeping. Now, pause here because the growth is accelerating. You head north toward the Petén region. That's where things get serious. The city of El Mirador, often overshadowed today, is exploding with innovation. You climb one of its pyramids, the La Danta complex, and by the time you reach the top, you're sweating, wheezing, and having a small existential moment. It's bigger than the Great Pyramid of Giza by volume. Did you know that? Probably not. Most people don't. El Mirador could house tens of thousands of people in its prime, and the roads leading from it are causeways. White limestone highways lit up by moonlight. Ancient glow-in-the-dark freeways. Historians still argue whether El Mirador was the first true Mayan city-state, or if it merely refined what others had begun. Either way, it's a marvel. You rest your tired legs beside a small altar. It's unassuming until you realize the corners are shaped like snakes. Everything here has meaning. Even the floor tiles are metaphorical. But here's a creeping truth you notice from this height. The jungle is thinning. To feed these growing cities, forests are being cleared. Hills are stripped for stone, and trees are turned into plaster. The Mayans mix limestone and ash into stucco, a glossy coating for walls and statues that gleams white under the midday sun and reflects heat like a tanning salon. Now the climate's shifting, not drastically, but noticeably. The land that once overflowed with fertile soil is starting to look a little tired. You pass farmers dragging buckets to distant rivers, muttering about how the rains came late again this year. Still, hope is in the air. You walk past a young couple arguing over what color to paint their new house, turquoise or red ochre. Nearby, a temple dedication is taking place, complete with incense and a hauntingly beautiful flute song that feels like it could peel open the sky. The Ajah, the city's ruler, is perched high above the crowd, wearing more jade than seems structurally safe. His headdress could probably pick up satellite channels. From your spot in the plaza, you look at the city and realize this is no longer a loose collection of farmers and dreamers. This is a fully realized, cosmically aligned, spiritually supercharged metropolis. And it's only the beginning. The stars above you seem to pulse with approval. You squint up at a monument that looks off. It's older than the others. Rounder. The glyphs carved into its surface don't look quite Mayan. The nose on that massive head statue, too wide. The helmet, definitely not local fashion. Something about it feels ancient even by your current time-traveling standards. You've just stumbled into the Olmec zone. And if you're confused, you're not alone. So are archaeologists. You pull up a seat, okay, a mossy rock, next to a group of researchers still scratching their heads over this one. Historians still argue whether the Olmecs were the mother culture of Mesoamerica, or just the coolest cousin who showed up early to the party and left before dessert. What's undeniable is this. The Olmecs made big stone heads. Like, really big. You run your fingers over one now. Each line of the helmet, each smirk frozen in basalt. They are carved from boulders hauled from miles away, which is great cardio, but also completely mystifying. No wheels, no draft animals, no problem. Just sweat, math, and an alarming disregard for lower back health. And the heads. No one knows for sure who they depict. Kings, warriors, early sports mascots. Pick your theory. Here's the juicy part. For decades, historians believed the Mayans were heavily inspired by these Olmecs. That Mayan civilization was a remix of an older, more advanced society. But then, something weird happened. You're now in Cebu, a lush Mayan city with its own unique vibe. Less of a strict grid, more of a jungle playground. A married team of archaeologists, Doctors Takeshi Inomata and Daniela Triadon, spent years elbow-deep in dirt here. They found a set of stone structures and did the logical thing, radiocarbon dating. Turns out, the buildings in Cebu were older than anything at La Venta, the most famous Olmec site. Like, 200 years older. You look at the dates. You look at the temples. You look at the academics high-fiving in slow motion. Maybe the Mayans didn't borrow from the Olmecs. Maybe they grew side by side, trading, sparring, influencing each other like rival artists who share a studio wall. A quirky twist. Some believe the Olmecs were Mayans, just an early, different flavor. Over time, the Olmec name might have just faded out, the way emo music morphed into indie and then alt-pop and no one quite remembers what started what. You hike to another mound nearby, and a guide casually mentions the word epi-Olmec. You pause mid-chew on your roasted squash. What now? Apparently, there are in-between civilizations, transitional styles of architecture, writing, and language that link the Olmecs to early Mayans like a breadcrumb trail through a forest of pottery shards. From your vantage point, it all feels messy and alive. Cultures growing like vines across the Yucatan, wrapping around each other, borrowing calendars and gods and probably recipes. It wasn't one neat evolution. It was a mosaic, a noisy neighborhood of societies growing up together, squabbling over borders, and occasionally building gigantic stone heads just to prove a point. You cross a plaza where two merchant stalls stand side by side. One sells jade beads in the early Olmec style, chunky, symmetrical, unpolished. The other, Mayan precision, Intricate engravings of toads and gods, each bead smaller than a fingernail. And both sellers swear they invented jadework. You decide not to get involved. One thing's clear. The Mayans are quickly pulling ahead in the civilizational race. Their architecture is shooting skyward. Their calendar system is getting more elaborate. And that writing? It's everywhere now. On steely staircases and even the sides of drinking cups. You kneel beside a glyph carved into a stone panel. It's a date. You realize that the Mayans weren't just writing poetry and prayers. They were writing history. Kings, battles, eclipses, births, all stacked together like cosmic receipts. They even recorded jokes. Yes, actual jokes. One glyph on a vase suggests the king's advisor was not the brightest cacao bean in the basket. At this stage, time is measured in spirals. Days, months, BAK tons. Layers of time that fold and unfold like cosmic origami. And here you are, smack in the middle of it, with your corn sole and your sweaty sandals. Oh, and here's your fringe fact for the night. Some Olmec statues show people with baby jaguars. Not pet jaguars, baby human jaguar hybrids. Scholars are still debating whether these were myths, deities, or extremely early fan fiction. Either way, they're unsettlingly adorable. Now night's fallen. You lie back beneath a carved lintel in Siebel, staring up at constellations barely touched by modern names. The jungle rustles, the stars blink, and somewhere in the distance, a priest is counting down the days until the next full moon. And whether you call it Olmec, Epi-Olmec, or early Maya, one thing's clear. Something big is brewing in the heart of this rainforest. The jungle hush breaks as you hear a low, steady beat, thump, thump, thump. Not your heart, though it's working overtime in this humidity. No, this rhythm echoes from a sacred court just ahead. You creep forward, brush aside a curtain of vines, and there it is, a grand stone ball court, shaped like a capital I, silent now, but once alive with sweat, breath, and fate. You sit where spectators once did, imagining the court in motion. On the slick stone surface, teams of 2 to 6 players dash and twist, their bodies sheened with oil, wrapped in thick padding to absorb the brutal impact of a 7-pound rubber ball hurtling through the air. And here's the twist. They can only hit it with their right hip, elbow, or knee. No hands, no feet, no mercy. Your modern reflexes scream, that's impossible. And yeah, it kind of is. But the goal? Smack the ball through a tiny vertical ring 6 meters above the ground. You crane your neck to look at it, absolutely tiny. It's like trying to throw a bowling ball through a donut. This isn't just a game. This is ritual. Because in Mayan cosmology, that ball court isn't a sports arena. It's a cosmic stage. According to the Popol Vuh, the hero twins used it to trick and defeat the Lords of Death, sneaking out of the underworld and restoring balance to the world. Every ball game played afterward echoes that divine match. Life versus death, light versus darkness. No pressure. You stand now in Copen, where the court was engraved with skulls and serpents. Sometimes a lord would dedicate a new court and open it with blood, literally. Whether the losing team was sacrificed is still up for debate, but there's more than one sculpture suggesting someone didn't make it home. You lean in closer to a panel. A jaguar-cloaked player kneels, arms bound, a blade raised beside him. The winner? Standing proud, offering the ball to the gods. Yeah, real. Thanks for playing energy. Historians still argue whether all losing teams were sacrificed or just the captives brought in for spectacle. Some think elite warriors volunteered, viewing sacrifice as a shortcut to the highest layer of Mayan heaven. Not bad, if you ignore the heart removal part. Now you're walking through Tikal, one of the biggest, baddest cities the Mayans ever built. It's the height of the classic period, roughly 250 to 900 CE, and this place is buzzing. Pyramid temples stretch above the jungle canopy. The great plaza bustles with merchants, scribes, nobles, and commoners. The smell of tamales and copal incense thickens the air. Up above, in the temple of the great jaguar, a ruler stands, arms outstretched. That's your local Ajah, or king. But he's more than a ruler. He's part divine. You can see it in the way people bow, in the glyphs etched into stone that compare him to sun gods and rainbringers. Being in a jaw isn't just fancy hats and proclamations. You're responsible for your city's well-being, its harvests, victories, and spiritual harmony. A drought? That's on you. Lost a war? Your fault. Not enough baby boys born this month. Well, that's a you problem too. Which brings us to the stars. You follow a staircase up a steep-sided pyramid. Watch your footing, it's a long way down, and find yourself inside a strange dome-shaped structure. It's not a temple. It's not quite a palace. It's something in between. Welcome to El Caracol, the Mayan observatory. You're now in Chichen Itza, and yes, it's later in the timeline, but this observatory is a must-see. Look at how it aligns perfectly with the movement of Venus, the planet of war and love. Mayan astronomers knew when Venus would rise, when it would set, and how to time major decisions by its cycle. Marriages, coronations, wars. You sit cross-legged on the cold stone floor, and a priest astronomer begins charting points of light in the night sky. No telescopes, but his records are so precise, they rival those of modern science. That calendar people freaked out about in 2012? It came from here. And here's the ironic twist. The Mayans never said the world would end in 2012. That date just marked the end of one big Kitan, or long count cycle. Kind of like a cosmic odometer rolling over. One cycle ends, another begins. That's it. No fireballs. No zombie apocalypse. Just a new Tuesday. Still, it makes for great marketing. You pause for a breath near a pool of water reflecting the stars. Someone offers you a drink of balch, a fermented honey beverage laced with tree bark. You sip and try not to grimace. It tastes like moonshine brewed in a terrarium. Supposedly good for visions, though. And your vision now? A civilization at its peak. Mayan cities are flourishing across the Yucatan. Roads, Sacbiab, or white roads, link settlements. Trade flows with obsidian, jade, feathers, cacao, and gossip. City-states jostle for power. Alliances shift faster than a modern election cycle. And ball games double as both ritual and royal PR. But high peaks often come before steep drops. And somewhere, in the distance, the clouds are gathering. For now, though, the stars are bright, the drums are steady, and your guide is whispering that tomorrow, you'll be allowed to climb the temple. Just don't trip. The gods are watching. You're tracing your fingers over something ancient, so fragile it crackles softly beneath your touch. It's not stone this time. It's paper. Thick, fibrous, slightly yellowed. Made from the inner bark of the wild fig tree. Covered in looping, impossibly intricate glyphs. And held together by jaguar skin? Yes, you're reading a Mayan codex, one of the 4 known to still exist. You're lucky to be seeing one. Most were torched, literally, by Spanish friars who arrived centuries later and decided these were demonic texts. They piled them high and burned them into ash. Today, only 4 codices have survived: Dresden, Madrid, Paris, and Grolier. You stare down at the pages like you're peeking into the mind of civilization that lived and died before your language even existed. The codex in your hands is filled with more than just prayers or records. It's packed with astronomy, medicine, rituals, even a lunar eclipse prediction or 2. These weren't dusty books. They were calendars, manuals, almanacs, ritual guides, and occasionally, yes, cheeky commentary on rival kings. You look up from the codex and realize where you are now, a scribe's workshop. Ink pots carved from bone and stone litter the floor. Quills fashioned from bird feathers lie beside half-finished glyphs. The walls are painted in radiant reds and deep blues, colors so vivid they seem immune to time. The writing system you see is no basic alphabet. Each glyph is a puzzle, part phonetic, part symbolic. It took modern scholars until the 20th century to decode it fully. For hundreds of years, people assumed Mayan script was just decorative. Turns out, they were recording everything, from royal births to wartime strategies, to what someone had for dinner on the 12th day of Wayeb. You lean in and notice something odd. Some glyphs are scratched out and re-inked. A correction? A political cover-up? Historians still argue whether scribes edited history to favor the ruling elite, or if the scratched glyphs were simply the Mayan version of spell check. You now follow a long stone corridor and emerge into a grand plaza. This isn't just a city, it's a stage. A place like Palenque, where pyramids rise like frozen waves, and everywhere you turned, the architecture seems to breathe. On one wall, a carved stela depicts King Pakal, elegantly dressed in jade jewelry and a towering headdress. His bones, by the way, still lie inside a tomb here, surrounded by masks, offerings, and a few unlucky sacrificial companions. Classic Pakal. But not all cities followed this pyramid and king script. You pass through what seems like a strange utopia. No massive temple, no murals glorifying a ruler's greatness. You're in Seren, a small village in present-day El Salvador that was buried under volcanic ash around 600 CE, like a Mayan Pompeii. But here's the kicker. No elite class has ever been found. No jade, no gold, just humble tools, shared granaries, and equal-size homes. A community of farmers and artisans living cooperatively. One archaeologist called them the hippies of the Mayan world. And you can't help but smile as you stroll past a half-eaten tamale, still sitting in a kitchen where someone likely dropped it mid-eruption. Seren offers a quieter chapter of Mayan life. No grand sacrifices, no shouting kings, just families tending to fields, working communal saunas. Yes, they had those, and painting their homes in bright colors. You feel the warmth of it, the ordinariness, the humanity. Back in the big cities, though, things are more intense. You're standing on the temple steps at Uxmal now, watching a ritual unfold. A boy, barely a teenager, carries a carved idol up toward a waiting priest. Below, the crowd chants as drums pulse. You feel that buzz again, the deep intertwining of religion and daily life. But it's not all chanting and firelight. Sacrifice is coming. Maybe just incense or food today. Maybe something more. Here's a quirky historical footnote. The Mayans were extremely hygienic. Daily steam baths, teeth filing, and even early forms of dental inlays. Some people had jade embedded in their teeth for decoration. That's right, ancient grills. You run your tongue across your own very unjade-like teeth and wonder how they did it without anesthesia. Braver souls, those Mayans. You're walking again, this time beside a young noblewoman. She explains how status is displayed through scarification, jewelry, elaborate clothing, and especially head shape. Mayan infants often had their heads flattened with wooden boards to achieve a graceful, sloped forehead. To modernize, it might look extreme, but in the Mayan world, it was beautiful, powerful, divine. As you pass through the market, you watch goods change hands. Obsidian blades, jade pendants, bundles of salt, rolls of woven cotton. No coins, no banks, just trust, trade, and shrewd bargaining. Somewhere nearby, cacao beans are being counted out for a feathered cloak. That's right, chocolate is currency. You mentally calculate how rich your snack drawer at home would make you. The sun dips low now. The pyramids cast long shadows. The temples glow orange, and you smell something burning. Probably copal resin, used to carry prayers upward in fragrant smoke. You lie back in the grass beside a half-buried temple, gazing up through palm fronds at a sky thick with stars. You think about how much these people knew, how much they wrote, and how much was lost. Burned, buried, scattered to time. But for now, here you are, on the edge of memory, in a civilization that still whispers through glyphs, pyramids, and songs caught in the jungle breeze. You're not alone in this jungle. Tonight, the air is thick with stories, each city humming with its own rhythm. You hop from one to the next, like ancient Uber, minus the Wi-Fi, feeling the beat of Mayan city-states. And that's the thing, this isn't one empire. It's a collection of fiercely independent city-states, each with its own ajaw, its own rituals, its own little obsessions. It's a bit like ancient Greece, but instead of olives and togas, you've got cacao and jade, and instead of Socratic debate, you've got human sacrifice on top of a pyramid. Different vibes, same competitive energy. You're walking through Kalak Mul, one of the biggest power players in this urban Game of Thrones. And if you think Tikal is the Mayan star, think again. Calakmul and Tikal were bitter rivals, locked in a centuries-long war that makes modern politics look like a pillow fight. Over here, you've got huge stele declaring military victories and royal marriages, which, by the way, were usually political chess moves. Over there, a prisoner is being paraded through the plaza. Not for fun. He's an offering, a gift to the gods. And that brings us to the darkest, most misunderstood side of Mayan culture: sacrifice. You tiptoe up the stone steps of a temple and pause at the summit. This is where it happens. Sometimes with drums, sometimes with flutes, always with blood. But here's the thing. Sacrifice wasn't just about killing. It was about giving. The gods needed nourishment, and blood, especially from someone important, was the highest form of devotion. In fact, royalty often did bloodletting themselves, cutting their tongues, earlobes, or other extremely cringeworthy places to honor the divine. Don't squirm. It's sacred. And then there's the really brutal version, heart extraction. You've heard the stories, and while some of them are exaggerated, thanks conquistadors, there's plenty of evidence that at key moments, like coronations, temple dedications, or major celestial events, someone was going to be painted blue and laid across the altar. Fringe theory time. Some scholars suggest that psychedelics were involved. Not for the victim, yikes, but for the priest or the crowd. Mushrooms, balch, or strong tobacco could have created a trance-like state, amplifying the spiritual intensity of the moment. Historians still argue whether these substances were ceremonial or recreational. But when the moon lines up just right and your local Ajah starts chanting in tongues, you probably don't ask questions. Still, not all Mayan communities were built around this intense ritual life. You're now back in Seren. Remember the hippies? The ones with the communal saunas and no apparent ruling class? Yeah, they're still living peacefully, trading squash and obsidian, not sacrificing anyone on a pyramid. It's oddly relaxing. Archaeologists found tools left in place, half-cooked meals, and footprints frozen in ash. No palaces, no royal tombs. Just people interrupted midday by a volcanic blast. You walk past a clay oven still warm in your imagination. A farmer's shovel sits by the door. There's something haunting about how ordinary it is. These people weren't elite, weren't warriors, weren't building temples to Venus. They were just trying to make it through the planting season. It's a powerful reminder. The Mayans weren't one monolithic group. They were a patchwork of cultures, some grand and God-obsessed, others humble and hearth-focused. Back in the cities, though, pomp and power are the norm. You're now stepping into Copan, which is one of the most intricately carved stele in the entire Mayan world. These aren't just tall stones. They're storytelling machines, carved with lineages, divine myths, and war records. You spend 10 minutes decoding a single panel before realizing it's basically a giant royal brag. I beat this guy, made the gods happy, and my headdress weighed 30 pounds. But even here, in the heart of elite rule, you see cracks forming. You pass a market where the prices seem off. Too much obsidian for too little cacao. People are arguing. There's tension in the air. Rumors of drought ripple through whispered conversations. And when you look closer, the plaster walls seem faded, the roads a little neglected. Something is coming, but not yet. For now, you descend into the underworld. Not literally, just spiritually. The Mayan afterlife isn't all clouds and harps. It's a 9-layered, soul-shredding obstacle course called Zabalba, ruled by death lords with charming names like Scab Stripper and Puss Master. Yeah, gross. The only way to bypass all that. Die in a way that pleases the gods. Sacrifice, childbirth, or a hero's death in battle. Those earned you a first-class ticket straight to the top layer of Mayan heaven. It's like skipping TSA at the cosmic airport. You lean on a stone altar and consider what it meant to live in this world. A place where stars dictated war, rulers bled for rain, and the game of ball could determine your afterlife. A place of stunning intellect, brutal devotion, and surprising humor. Remember the scratched-out glyphs and ancient dad jokes. And through it all, one thread weaves everything together. Maze. Still, always, from the myths to the meals to the sacrifices, corn isn't just food, it's identity. You tuck a kernel in your pocket and keep walking. The jungle's whispering now. The cities are growing louder, faster. And somewhere, high on a temple, an Ajah is staring at the sky, worried. Something's not right with the rain. The sky above you feels wrong. Too cloudless, too still. The chirping birds have gone quiet, and even the wind seems to hesitate as you step through the towering city of Tikal, once the beating heart of the Mayan world. From atop one of its limestone temples, you look out across a forest that stretches forever, but something's missing. It's not as lush, not as wild, and the air? It smells faintly of ash and heat. You climb down carefully, no railings here, and walk past rows of palaces, still imposing but starting to crack in places. A wall has collapsed where the roots of a ceiba tree have pried open a seam. You hear no hammers, no voices, just the quiet creak of a city too large for its own good. At its peak, Tikal housed nearly 50,000 people, maybe more if you count the surrounding area. That's massive for a society with no metal tools, no wheels, and no pack animals. It's a triumph, but also means Tikal needs a lot of food. A lot. And here's the problem. The jungle can't keep up. To feed its swelling population, Mayan farmers use slash-and-burn agriculture, a technique where you clear a patch of forest, burn it, plant crops, then move on. It works until it doesn't. Eventually, there's no forest left to burn. The soil tires out, the rivers run low, and the people, they get hungry. You pass a family carrying water jars from a faraway cenote. Their voices are low. Tikal's reservoirs are shrinking. Something is off with the rain. The priests chant and bleed. The Ajahs make offerings. Still, the skies remain stubbornly blue. Historians still argue whether the Mayans truly understood climate change, or if they simply believed their gods had gone quiet. Either way, the response is the same. More temples, more ceremonies, more blood. But the rains don't come. You pause beside a low, mossy wall and notice something strange. A row of small carvings showing cloud glyphs, each one crossed out. Someone documented the absence of rain. A farmer's quiet protest? Or a scribe's bitter joke? A quirky historical tidbit. To build and decorate their grand cities, the Mayans used a lot of stucco, a mixture of limestone and water. It made walls shine bright, white in the sun, like polished bone. Beautiful, yes, but expensive. Creating it meant cutting and burning tons of trees, releasing carbon into the air. Ironically, their very success may have triggered local deforestation-driven climate shifts. So, in trying to impress the gods, they may have hastened their own downfall. A tragic cosmic feedback loop. You trek deeper into the countryside now, where once lush fields are cracked and dry. A boy kneels in the dirt, pressing maize seeds into dust, whispering to them like they might listen. You want to tell him it's not his fault, that the skies don't respond to prayers anymore. But he already knows. Back in the city, things are fraying. Public works slow down. Temples go unfinished. Murals in mid-stroke. You walk into a scribe's chamber and see half-written glyphs frozen in time. Did he flee? Did he starve? No one knows. But the silence on the page is louder than any war drum. And speaking of drums, there's tension in the air. You catch word of riots, rebellions. The Ajahs aren't gods anymore. They're just men, and hungry men make enemies. You step over a toppled stela bearing the face of a once beloved king. Someone's chiseled over it, replacing his glyphs with those of a rival. Historical revisionism, Mayan style. From here, you can see defensive structures cropping up where there once were plazas. Palisades, trenches, even simple traps made from sharpened bamboo. Cities that once competed through trade and festivals are now facing off with blades and fire. You visit Dos Pilas, another important site, and find signs of battle. Burned homes, skeletons with shattered bones. You crouch by a half-scorched mural showing warriors fleeing a collapsing city. It's chaos, documented in vibrant color, and then frozen forever. Still, even amid the fear, life continues. You pass a woman grinding maize by torchlight, her face gaunt but calm. Her son brings her a carved wooden spoon with intricate patterns. Someone still cares about art. Even in decline, beauty find a way to hang on. But the biggest tragedy isn't the drought, or the hunger, or even the war. It's the loss of memory. As cities fall, the scribes stop writing. The calendars stop counting. The codices are buried or burned. And without stories, civilizations fade faster than we realize. You linger in a nearly empty plaza and try to picture it full. Music, chatter, dancers, offerings. Now it's just you, a few looters, and the ghosts. You take a final look at Tikal's tallest temple, silhouetted against the setting sun. It's still standing, still defiant, but hollow. A monument to a time when the rain fell like clockwork and kings believed they could speak to the stars. Now the skies are quiet. You press forward, feet dragging through hot, cracked mud along the banks of what used to be a river. It's dry now, just a ribbon of dust and brittle reeds where fish once splashed and women gathered to wash cloth and whisper about the gods. You're deeper in the southern lowlands now, following the eerie trail of vanishing cities. It starts in Patexbatten, a region that once teemed with life, trade, ceremony, and politics. Now silence. You approach Aguatica, perched dramatically on a limestone ridge above a swampy basin. Defensive walls still stand here, as if the city expects an attack that never quite arrives. You step inside the royal palace and freeze. The floor is still scattered with tools. Bone needles, writing instruments, half-carved figurines, even bowls of pigment, abandoned like someone had shouted fire, and no one came back. It's as if the city had been paused mid-sentence. Historians still argue whether Aguatica was violently sacked or abandoned in fear. Maybe both. What's clear is that something or someone scared the people enough to drop everything and run. You sift through broken ceramic, careful not to cut your fingertips, and wonder what the artist was trying to finish. A god? A king? A warning? Further north, in Bonampak, murals remain. They're bright, elaborate, and interrupted. You move along the painted walls, watching a victory parade unfold in brilliant blue and red. Then, suddenly, the painting just stops. One wall is only sketched, a handful of figures outlined, but never colored. No final brushstrokes. Just goodbye. The air here is heavy, like the forest is holding its breath. You pass a scribe's bench, still ink-stained, and a pile of partially carved stone that was meant to be another history stela. But no one came back to finish it. Even time seems to have walked away. A fringe theory whispers on the wind. Maybe it wasn't drought or war that stopped the hands of the artists, but a collective disillusionment. When a society built on cosmic cycles and divine kingship starts collapsing, maybe the people simply lost faith. And with faith goes purpose. You hike toward a high ridge and look down at the empty plazas of Yaxchilan. The temples are still here, the glyphs still legible, but no one reads them anymore. You're not sure if that makes them more sacred or more tragic. And now comes a strange twist in the tale. Just when you think it's all falling apart, you hear something unexpected. Music. Not far off, in the northern Yucatan, some cities aren't collapsing, they're thriving. You head toward Chichen Itza, where the great ball court rings with sound and laughter. Markets are bustling. Temples are still rising. Even new roads are being paved. What gives? It turns out the collapse wasn't universal or immediate. While the southern lowlands crumbled under drought, war, and famine, the Puyuk region in the north seems to have dodged the worst of it, at least for a while. You stroll into Uxmal, a jewel of this northern renaissance. The governor's palace gleams, with over 20,000 intricately carved stones fitted together so precisely you couldn't wedge a blade between them. You marvel at the celestial alignment. The doors frame the rising of Venus on key days of the year. This isn't a society in free fall. This is brilliance. And yet, there's a shadow creeping along the walls. You speak to a vendor in the Uxmal marketplace. Her baskets are full of fruit and textiles, but she's nervous. Fewer caravans, she says. The roads are quiet. You nod, pretending not to notice how dry the fields look outside the city walls. You climb a pyramid and see it for yourself. Beyond Uxmal's borders, the forest isn't as green. There's smoke from distant fires. And though the city still thrives, there's a sense that it's running on borrowed time. The collapse has slowed, but it hasn't stopped. It's just wearing a nicer headdress. Here's a quirky little note. Some Mayan rulers in the Puc region began recycling monuments from older cities. Literally, they pulled carved stones from long-dead temples and rebuilt them into new ones. Imagine a brand new presidential palace made entirely from the ruins of older governments. Powerful, yes, but also desperate. Back in Chichen Itza, things are even more complex. The city seems to have grown by welcoming outsiders, maybe even war refugees from the south. The architecture shifts. You see influences from the Toltecs, a central Mexican culture. Feathered serpent carvings, you know the one, Kukulkan, start to dominate temple walls. New gods join the old ones. Historians still argue whether this was conquest, migration, or cultural fusion. Was Chichen Itza taken by the Toltecs, or did they partner up? One thing's clear, the city changed fast. You wander into the Cenote Sagrado, a sacred sinkhole once used for offerings. Trinkets, jewelry, and bones. Lots of bones. It wasn't just coins they tossed into this wishing well. People, often children, were sacrificed here, possibly to bring rain. It's beautiful and horrible at once, like so much of the Mayan world. Even here, in this northern stronghold, the cycle starts again. The murals begin to fade. The temples go unfinished. Trade slows to a crawl. And one by one, the great cities fall silent. You hike to the outskirts of Uxmal again. That same vendor? Gone. Her stall is empty, half covered by vines. The palace is still there, but no one rules from it now. Just a few bats and some very judgmental iguanas. The sun sets over a landscape of ruins. You stand on a hill and realize the collapse didn't come in a single night. It came in waves, slow, stuttering, uneven. Some cities fell violently, others quietly. Some flared bright before blinking out. Others faded like smoke. But fade they did. You take one last look at the horizon, at temples wrapped in jungle and stories buried in stone, and you start walking again. Toward whatever's left. You move slower now. The air is still hot, but heavier somehow, as if the jungle itself is sighing. You trail your hand along the smooth edge of a staircase at Uxmal, now covered in moss and shadows. The echoes of drums, trade, and ritual are gone. All that's left is the whisper of wind and the occasional flap of a bird's wings overhead. Here, at the end of the Puc region's final breath, everything feels suspended, like history is holding still. Not quite dead, but no longer alive. The governor's palace remains majestic, its facade adorned with over 20,000 intricately carved stones. You marvel again at the precision, the geometry, the ambition. But you also notice the cracks. Hairline fractures that creep between glyphs. A few stones have fallen out entirely, their patterns half erased by time. Uxmal was supposed to last. The city grew even after the southern lowlands crumbled. It adapted. It traded. It even built new roads and temples during the decline. And yet, here you are, alone on the pyramid steps. No dancers, no market smells, just the slow return of vines and silence. You sit where a priest once stood and look out over a land that should still be booming. The buildings are intact. The roads still gleam. But the people are gone. Historians still argue why the northern collapse happened. The droughts had slowed here, sure. The soil was a bit more forgiving. And cities like Uxmal and Chichen Itza thrived for decades after others had fallen. So why did they vanish so quickly in the 10th and 11th centuries? Maybe it was internal unrest. Maybe rulers lost legitimacy. Maybe the same problems, overpopulation, poor harvests, infighting, just took longer to catch up. Or maybe the cities simply outgrew their environment and couldn't bounce back a second time. You get up and walk toward Chichen Itza, where tourists now pose for selfies in front of El Castillo, the temple of Kukulkan. But in your time, it's still in use. Priests climb the steep steps in rhythmic silence, offerings in hand, robes fluttering like birds. Chichen Itza was the last great flame of the classic and post-classic periods. Its ball court, the largest in all of Mesoamerica, stretches beyond belief. You step into its center and imagine the weight of the crowd, the thud of the ball, the heat radiating off the white limestone. But even here, the collapse is near. You pass murals and inscriptions dated into the 11th century, but the frequency drops off. The artistry fades. The glyphs get sloppy, as if scribes stopped caring. Or perhaps were rushed. You catch sight of a carving that feels almost recycled, an image borrowed from another city, another ruler. Like a once proud empire falling back on its greatest hits before disappearing from the charts entirely. And yet, the people didn't vanish. This is the part we forget. The cities died, but the Maya didn't. You walk into a modern village, the jungle grown thick again around it, and hear the faint sound of conversation in Yucatec Maya. Children laugh. A woman shells corn. A man carves wood under a mango tree. These aren't ruins. This is continuity. Today, millions of people still speak Maya languages. They still farm maize using ancient methods. They still make jewelry and clothing with patterns that mirror those carved into temples thousands of years ago. Sure, they use phones, and some work in cities or teach history classes. But they're still here, living on land their ancestors once ruled, preyed on, and bled for. A quirky twist. In Tulum, one of the last Mayan cities to fall, you'll find glyphs that seem oddly calm, as if they accepted the end, or perhaps prepared for it. A soft landing, rather than a fiery crash. You crouch beneath a ceiba tree, sacred still, and let the roots rise between your fingers. Somewhere deep underground, the bones of kings rest. But above them, families plant squash. Kids chase chickens. Time flows forward. As the stars come out, you feel the gentle push of a long cycle closing. And for the first time tonight, you exhale slowly, knowing that endings here don't always mean finality. Sometimes they just mean sleep. You lie back in the warm grass, the faint hum of jungle life rising and falling around you like breath. The stars stretch across the sky in soft, glowing arcs. No longer omens, just quiet companions in the dark. The pyramids now look like mountains, their sharp lines blurred by time and vines. The air has softened. The intensity of sacrifice and ceremony has faded into the low buzz of insects and the rustle of leaves. You feel the ground cool beneath you. This is the ending, but not the end. The Mayan cities have fallen silent, yes. But in their silence, something else blooms, an understanding of cycles, of survival, of how beauty and brilliance can live in stories, in languages still spoken, in hands that remember how to carve stone and shape maize. The jungle takes, but it also protects. The roots grow through temples, but they don't erase them. They hold them in place, like the memories that remain, held not in museums, but in lullabies, in recipes, in names. You feel a breeze now, a gentle one, like the breath of a god that no longer needs your fear, only your stillness. So close your eyes. Let the stars shift. Let the stones rest. And if you listen very carefully, you might still hear them. The echoes of ball games, the murmur of ancient prayers, the heartbeat of a civilization that never really disappeared. It simply went to sleep.